masks. Put them on, take them off, wear 2, wear 4, wear 25, who knows anymore. But now the U.S. House of Representatives is going to reimpose their mask mandate. So we've seen this back and forth all throughout America. Put the mask on, take the mask off, and it's even gone so far as to sort of spread around our congressional building. So we're going to take a look at what's going on here because there's a back and forth. Nancy Pelosi came out and called Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy a moron for not complying with her new mask mandates. And then today, when everybody woke up and went to work, they saw this bulletin in the Capitol building that says, if you're not wearing a mask like Nancy Pelosi ordered, we're going to arrest your butts and take you right down to jail. And so now the Republicans are saying, well, we're not going to mask up anyways, and we're just going to not comply. So we're going to break down this story. Let's start with a headline over from the New York Times, just so we get a little bit of background on what's happening here. U.S. House of Representatives will once again require masks in the chambers, right? So off, on and off and on and off and off. Why? The Delta variant. Of course, senators are being encouraged to mask up as well, but they're not required to do so. Where did this all come from? Earlier this week, there was a doctor named Dr. Brian Monahan. He's Congress's doctor. He said that he was recommending the change based on the CDC guidelines, which we've already seen have changed like 50 times this week. And so we're going to take a look at that. Speaker Pelosi then made the change official on the House floor on Wednesday morning. Dr. Monahan wrote for Congress, representing a collection of individuals traveling weekly from various risk areas. He says all individuals should wear well-fitted masks and a medical-grade filtration mask when they're in an interior space. Okay, so we've seen a lot of this. Biden's out doing it today. Psaki was out doing it all week, and I think her deputy was out today. They're all talking about, well, everything's changing. The science is changing. Our new numbers are changing. Data is changing. And so we have to change our recommendations based on the new data. And so now we have, okay, now it's time to mask up again. Now, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle here because Dr. Brian Monahan set a different set of rules for the Senate. The Senate, of course, is a much smaller body, 100 senators versus 435 House representatives. And so sort of they didn't have the same strict recommendations as senators as the House representatives did. And so there was a little bit of a parting of the seas over there. Some people can mask, some people cannot. But anyways, the Republicans are just upset about it in general. So here is Kevin McCarthy. After Nancy Pelosi started hinting that it was going to be a mask bonanza in Congress, he said, make no mistake, the threat of bringing back masks is not a decision based on science, but it's based on liberal government officials who want to continue the perpetual pandemic state, which is, I think, a pretty astute observation here for somebody who, according to Nancy Pelosi, is a moron. We have actually seen this unfold right in front of our very eyes. It's sort of this perpetual, okay, we're scared again. We're scared again. We're scared again. Be scared again. And we're going to dive into a lot of that as the show continues. Now, many people have been asking to see some of the data. We know that some of these changes sort of felt like whiplash. We heard from another journalist who was in the White House press briefing room earlier this week who asked Jen Psaki specifically and said, hey, what are you going to tell Americans that have whiplash from all of the CDC's policy changes? You make a decision, you sort of revoke the decision, you have a celebration day. Joe Biden comes out and says, it's a great day in America. We can take our masks off. Scratch that. 2 months later, put them back on. So many people are wondering, what the heck is the CDC doing? And over from cron.com, experts are now asking to see the data as well. What is the justification for the new policy? Over from Crone, written July 28th by a number of different people from the Washington Post, they say that new recommendations from federal health officials this week call on vaccinated Americans to wear face masks. People who've had their shots and become infected with Delta can harbor large amounts of the virus just like unvaccinated people. That means they can become spreaders, so they got to put a mask on. But the CDC did not publish the new research. So they just made this policy change without giving any data. In the text of the updated masking guidance, the agency merely cited CDC COVID-19 response team unpublished data 2021. So everybody's saying, okay, well, so you made the change. You say it's based on the science. We heard from Jen Psaki earlier in the week. They said, well, what's the basis for the change? And she said, well, government data. And they said, well, we need some more, a little bit more than that, Jen. And she said, how about this? We're saving lives. And if you disagree with that, well, you must be wanting to kill grandma, as has been the case for the last 18 months. Some scientists have their own message, says, show us the data. They're making a claim that people with Delta who are vaccinated and unvaccinated have similar levels of viral load. But nobody knows what that means. said the associate professor at the Yale Law School or Yale School of Public Health. Says it's meaningless unless we see the data. And so this is what a lot of people have been, battling about. It sort of feels like the party that is so attached to science is making a bunch of decisions that they are claiming are based on science, but many people are asking about it. Where's the data, including this Yale School professor? All right, so here's Nancy Pelosi now. As this mask kerfuffle has been happening in our high school Congress classrooms, we have Nancy Pelosi, who is then walking to her car, and somebody says, "Oh, Kevin McCarthy is now sort of opposing your mask mandate there, Madam Pelosi. What do you have to say about that?" And she goes on her little, tirade, and then you're not going to be able to hear it closely. You may have to have headphones in. You may have to listen to this close. We're going to play the clip twice, and what we'll see is at the very last minute, she says, "He's a moron," talking about Kevin McCarthy. He's a moron. And, I know a lot of people are upset about that provocative language coming out from Nancy Pelosi. I'm not a particular, I don't have a lot of problems with that, right? Donald Trump tended to use some tough language and provocative language and colorful language, and I appreciate that. I'm not particularly concerned about the moron thing, more as much as I am with boneheaded policy decisions that are not based in science, that are political gestures, and then the follow-up, which is arrests if you don't comply with Madam's rules. So that's really the big issue, but we all got to see the moron clip. So here is Nancy Pelosi calling Kevin McCarthy, the Republican, a moron. Here she is.
Mandate from him. I have nothing to say about that except we honor it.
Leader McCarthy says it's against the science.
One more time. Get ready for it.
Mandate from him. I have nothing to say about that except we honor it.
Leader McCarthy says it's against the science.
Such a moron, she says. So Peter McCarthy says that your decision's against the science. She says he's such a moron. And, the Republicans are not far from that. I don't want to speak to Kevin McCarthy, specifically, but yeah, the Republicans have done a bunch of moronic stuff or have not done really anything. So she's not far off on that. But the point here is it's about the actual mask policy. McCarthy's criticism here, he's not calling her names. His criticism is that it's not based in science. She says, well, he's a moron for believing that. And so she got asked about that today in wherever this was. And she kind of doubles down on it. She says, basically it's unwise. She's not going to use that same language again. But here's Pelosi clarifying what she meant.
Is Kevin McCarthy a moron, and if so, why?
I said earlier in my comment, science. On almost every subject that you can name, science is the answer. Whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's a health crisis, whether it's our preeminence in the world in technology, science. To say that wearing a mask is not based on science, I think, is not wise, and that was my comment, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a disagreement, don't we? We've got a situation where a lot of people are asking for the data. We had the Yale associate professor from Yale. He wants some information about, hey, what's the basis for this? You saying that there's good evidence that the Delta variant can cause vaccinated people to carry a viral load. So let's see the data. Where did it come from? And what's the basis of the decision from the CDC to require everybody to mask up? If it's all science, let's see the data. And so there are now rumors going around that the data is based on this study that came from India that is based on vaccines that aren't even in the United States, that are not being used here. And so, of course, right, we got to be cautious about making sure that we're not spreading medical information or anything like that. Certainly not, I'm not intending to do that. But this is directly from the Speaker, the House Minority Leader now. This is Kevin McCarthy. And so he's giving us a little bit of data about what the CDC is basing their decision on. What data are they basing their decision on? Why are they changing these mask guidelines all of a sudden? He was out holding a press conference talking about Pelosi and her leadership. This was, I believe, today or yesterday, very recently.
Think about what the CDC did just this week. They forced vaccinated Americans to wear masks because of a study in India about a vaccine that's not even in America, that has not been peer-reviewed. The CDC has become a political arm of the administration. It wants to control every element of our life.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a moron to me. That sounds pretty accurate. Now, I don't know much about the study or where he's getting that data, but he is the House Minority Leader, so he should have access to all of that information or be in the know. And so if he's telling us that there was a study based in India that was based on a vaccine that we don't even use, it wasn't peer reviewed, and the CDC just goes, "Oh yeah, perfect. That study works great for us because we want to impose masks. We want to impose lockdowns. We want to freak everybody out to drive up the vaccination rates." And so that study's perfect. That gives us a good justification and very good basis for now coming in here and changing the rules, because we're a party of science. We can just rely on that study that's not peer reviewed that comes from India, that is about a vaccine that nobody in the United States is taking, to implement and to influence our policy decisions. So that's what's happening, which, if that's the case, now it feels like that's an agency that is out in search of a solution. They're saying, we have this problem. We have Americans that are not getting vaccinated at quick enough rates or to the degree that we would be liking. And so we have to go find justification to cause some pressure points, to cause some pain points, which we've already seen discussed. People who are medical commentators were on CNN talking about this specifically. We've seen this from other people, former, I think, Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, if I got that name right. I recall that she was out there saying that we have to make it difficult for the unvaccinated. We have to sort of penalize certain people in this country that don't want to comply with the government requests or soon to be mandates. So this is where it becomes problematic. If the CDC is now just sort of identifying a problem and then finding a study to justify some policy changes, that certainly sounds political, more so than it is medicinal or therapeutic in any way, shape, or form. This also goes beyond the masks, okay? I've been saying on this show that we're going to see COVID crimes, that we're going to start to see people getting arrested and charged with COVID crimes for not masking up or for lying about their vaccination status or for whatever. Gavin Newsom was comparing these people to drunk drivers, even though there are about 30 logical fallacies with that analogy and that comparison. But we're going to see more and more of it. And we see it right in our own congressional house. It's not even far away. And it's going to be coming to a city near you, if I had to guess. Congresswoman Kat Cammack was in Congress today. She said, in today's edition of Pelosi's abuse of power, Capitol Police have been directed to arrest staff and visitors to comply with her mask mandate for vaccinated individuals. For members, if you're a congressperson, they advise not arresting, but, quote, reporting members to the sergeant at arms for their failure to comply, right? So if you are Congresswoman Kat Cammack, well, you can go in there without a mask if you're vaccinated, or if you're not. Got to wear, a mask. If you don't, she'll be okay. But her secretary, her assistant, her clerk, or whatever they call them, are not. If they're not wearing a mask, they're subject to arrest. Because she's a congresswoman, she has special privileges. And so you can see how that might put a rub in your day, especially if you have people who are not going to be wearing the mask, maybe because they are vaccinated or have other objections to it. Who is this congresswoman? She is over from, where is this? Florida, Florida's district. Looks like she is the youngest GOP woman in the 117th Congress, so that's pretty neat. She's over on Twitter at Rep. Kat Cammack, and so she posted this. Let's see what's going on in here. Bulletin posted, just like, when you go to school and you got a bulletin, your assignments are due. Wearing of masks is mandatory at all time for the U.S. Capitol Police personnel or USCP personnel in interior spaces on Capitol grounds. This is coming from the Office of the Chief of Police, and this was published July 28th, comes from the U.S. Capitol Police, we can see here. And there is now, after this was published, some, bickering back and forth. Nancy Pelosi's office is saying, oh, we had nothing to do with this. And she's saying it was the Capitol Police. It's whatever the Capitol Police want to do, they can do. And you start asking yourselves, okay, but it was your mask policy. You ordered that. Certainly, if you didn't want the Capitol Police, given that you're the Speaker of the House, I would imagine that a sternly worded letter from you towards the U.S. Capitol Police might encourage them to change this policy and not arrest Congress people's staff as they're coming into work that day. Just the thought, but I could be wrong about that. But here it says on July 27th, CDC issued new guidance. Everybody's got to wear a mask. This is from the U.S. Capitol Police. According to the CDC, the Delta variant is very problematic. We're very scared about it. Based on this information, the Office of the Attending Physician, who we read from, Dr. Monahan earlier, advised Congress to follow the CDC guidance, require mask wearing in interior spaces to help reduce the risk of COVID-19 infection. All right. Therefore, the police say, effective immediately, to promote the good health and well-being of our employees, all USCP personnel must wear a mask at all times when in interior spaces throughout the Capitol grounds. Everybody, all times, must wear a mask. Okay. In addition, effective immediately, at all FLETC sites, masks are required for all individuals on site and social distancing as well. U.S. Capitol Police Office of Occupational Safety will be contacting everybody to assess inventories of masks and deliver additional masks. Also, U.S. Capitol Police officers who work in the House Division or the House side of the Capitol shall enforce this mask policy on all staff and visitors within the above noted locations. Okay, so remember how we talked about this? In the Capitol building, you sort of have these two wings. Anybody who's over on that wing shall enforce this mask policy. It's mandatory. There's no discretion. If you're a U.S. Capitol Police officer and you see somebody with a mask off, it's a mandatory policy. You shall enforce this for staff and visitors in those locations. This includes all House office buildings, okay, so where the staff is, the hall of the House, and House committee meetings. Everything. This also applies to members of Congress, but you can't arrest members of Congress for not wearing a mask. Any member who fails should be reported to the House Sergeant at Arms. So, you know, a congressperson, when they're in congressional duties, they have certain levels of immunity that prevent them from being arrested. This is sort of to stop a dictator from arresting all the legislators to prevent them from passing a bill to depose that tyrant, something like that. If a visitor or staff member fails to wear a mask or a request is made to do so, the visitor or staff shall be denied entry to the House office buildings or the House side of the Capitol. Any person who fails to either comply or leave, subject to arrest for unlawful entry, sounds like a criminal trespass type of violation. If a staffer who is accompanying a member refuses to wear a mask, that refusal should be noted. Reported to a supervisor, will refer the House to the Sergeant at Arms. As always, thank you for washing your hands. OAP Test Center is available. Signed off by the J. Thomas Manger, Chief of Police over from the Capitol Police. And so, you know, there it is. It's actually in writing. It's a bulletin. COVID crimes. Not wearing your mask, you're going to get arrested for it in our own congressional buildings. So if you think that it's not coming to a town near you, it's happening in our federal government, right in the congressional buildings. So of course it's coming to a location near you. There's no question about that. And we're going to see more and more of it. Now, the Republicans naturally made a spectacle here because they should, because this is a spectacle. And so they seized it with total regard. Let's take a look at what happened here. Walking their way into the House chambers, here is the entire congressional delegation from the GOP. Guess what? They're not wearing masks, are they? No masks. There they go. No masks at all. So those are the Republicans. I think that's Caldwell, I forget his name. Is that Marjorie Taylor Greene? I don't know. And so they're all walking in there with no masks. And I think as I was starting the show, there was a lot of this tomfoolery going on over there. So we'll see what is happening with that. Let's take a look at some of the questions that are coming in so we can jump into those. We've got some great ones coming in over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I've got those queued up right here, ready to rock and roll. And we've also got some super chats that came in. So let's give a quick shout out. We'll go over here to, I got this queued up, so we'll go here first. We have NY Renal MD, the doctor's in the house, says, CDC has bungled this pandemic. Bandanas and shirt sleeves, along with surgical masks, offer almost no protection. The only protection for masks are for health professionals, frontline workers. Okay. He says the mandate is dividing us and confusing the public. People should find out their antibody status to COVID, ask their doctor on what to do to protect them from infection. So, you know, we always got to be careful with, you know, any medical advice or information. So, I think the big takeaway here is consult with your doctor, I think, is the reasonable way to approach this entire conversation as it relates to vaccines, right? It's have a conversation with your doctor about that. And your doctor will be the person who's best advised or in a best position to advise you about what to do. The problem with all of these mandates is exactly that. They are mandates. And they are coming from the federal government that are not medical professionals, that have all sorts of conflicts of interest and have a bad history of being honest and acting with integrity. People are sick of it. And so that is why people are now hesitant about any of these mandates, because it's a mandate. And that might make sense because you're getting information and demands from non-medical professionals that don't know your physical condition, don't know your medical history. That seems problematic to me. All right, good to see you, Doc. We have another one here from Ghost Gunner is in the house. Says, Rob, it's just 14 days to slow the spread to do your part. Yeah, I forgot about that. Why do you hate old people so much? This whole thing is just about control from Ghost Gunner. Yeah, 14 days, just a quick 14 days. And I remember then I was really not happy about it, but we said, okay, fine, 14 days. I guess we'll do that. But it's turning into 14 months, longer than that now, isn't it? We'll see. I don't know why I hate grandma so much. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I also didn't know that sort of liberty was directly related to killing grandparents. But all right, so good to see you, Ghost Gunner. We had some super chats coming in, so let's make sure we don't miss those. We had Mark Hill says, there is no test for the Delta variant, and the CDC quit using the PCR test. That is over on YouTube. Says, yeah, so there's no, right, because it's COVID, right? So you'd have to sort of, I think, do a deeper analysis. You're not going to see those over-the-counter tests that just identify it. Good information. Thank you, Mark Hill, for that. We had another one come in. I think that one just popped in. We have another one here from Copper Lobo. Says, and they wonder why people don't want to get vaccinated. America has lost all trust in government. Good to see you, Copper Lobo. Appreciate that one. Yeah, because the government is just botching the responses, right? If they keep flip-flopping, if they keep doing things that show that there's really no basis for the promises that they made, that's a problem. And to be more clear about what I'm talking about, if they told us that if you get vaccinated, you can take your mask off. Then they both got vaccinated, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, in December of 2020, right after the election. Then they continued to wear masks all the way up until 2 months ago, which would have been May. So that for about 5 months, while they were vaccinated, they were wearing masks, showing people through their message, through their symbolism of wearing a mask, that maybe there is something wrong with something happening here. Why, if you're vaccinated, do you still need to wear the mask? Joe Biden was wearing double masks. Now, I'm not saying that is medical or that is a logical conclusion, but that's what people perceive. That's what the world sees. And we saw that with Kamala Harris going down, walking side by side with the Mexican president. She's masked, he's not. People can draw their own conclusions from that. They watch what you do, not what you say. That's why it's problematic. All right, we have some other ones. Justin F. was in the house with a very nice super chat. Says, thank you for your work you do. Keep it up, sir. Thank you, Justin F. I really appreciate that. Very generous of you. Thank you for your support here. And Kareem165 says, I noticed every time we're about to get out of this pandemic, they come up with a new scientific reason for a lockdown. Stop traveling again. I know many here who got the vaccine just to be free. And look what's happening, right? Travel restrictions. The White House was out today talking about that they may actually comply. If the CDC comes out and recommends new lockdowns, yeah, they're going to follow the science because they keep saying that. So we have Nancy Pelosi, who's over here on Locals. How'd she get in here? Nancy Pelosi says, how dare you oppose my mask mandate? Robert, you better be careful or I'll have you impeached. Impeach me, Pelosi. Impeach me away. First of all, I wrote the impeachment party template, which was better than your garbage articles of impeachment, which we read here. I used them as a template, and I improved them massively because you guys obviously are terrible at impeaching people. You tried twice, didn't work. We also have Super Iron Bob says, McCarthy will talk but not do anything to bring in the fools in the party into line. I'm getting tired of the amount of talk without action and the allowances for those who would backstab their constituents in his party. That's from Super Iron Bob. Yeah, look, I have no love for the Republicans or any conservatives. I don't even know what they're doing. Is there a Republican leader who's standing up? I mean, in Congress, right? DeSantis is doing a bunch. Abbott is doing a bunch in their localities. But the only real, a handful of Congress people who are saying anything about any of these new momentum shifts, Rand Paul, any other senators from the Republicans? No, they're useless. They're just along for the ride. We have another no name here says, arresting people for masklessness will give glorified security guards like the Capitol Police something to do. The clips yesterday looked like they were auditioning for the Oprah show. Yeah, my gosh, that's so right. They would not last one night with Portland cops who night after night have dangerous objects thrown at fires started. They're an embarrassment to real cops. You know, I was watching Officer Fanoni was on Dans Le Monde's show yesterday on CNN, and there was a 9-minute clip that was passing itself around Twitter, and it was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen, right? I've spoken with many officers, and the way that this conversation was happening was hysterical. I actually clipped the whole thing. We're probably going to talk about it in another show or a different segment, but it was actually, like, the guy is clearly auditioning. It is absolutely an Oprah show. I was thinking about it. I was thinking, oh, this is just the pre-audition for his book tour, which of course is going to be coming. I'm Not Gases here says midterms are coming soon. Polling isn't as favorable as the Dems would like, so ramping up the COVID hysteria seems like a strategic move to energize their base and, if need be, provide more justification for election shenanigans like universal mail-in ballots. Yeah, COVID last time was the justification for all sorts of election shifts. Moving things around, like pushing dates back, allowing more universal mail-in balloting, waiving some signature requirements, allowing people to register just online without any ID, all sorts of stuff that we covered, all premised on COVID because it was so dangerous and deadly that we couldn't have them walking around out in public. Now, that being said, right, the midterms are not for quite some time away. So can't imagine that they're going to be able to extend the Delta hysteria into that. But we'll probably get Lambda or Kappa or Gamma or Beta, whatever the next Delta is going to be. We have Todd Trout's in the house, says, Rob, what is the worst optic? Not wearing a mask on the House floor or the picture of showing handcuffs being put on a non-compliant House member? Call her bluff, which I think that's what they're doing right now. As I was getting ready for the show, I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw a lot of those images that they're sort of walking through Congress without any masks on. We have some other questions coming in. Let's see what we've got. Sergeant Bob is here, says, sorry, comment on Capitol Police is from Sergeant Bob. Oh, okay. So that was from Sergeant Bob. Oh, that's the second screen. That was from Sergeant Bob on the Capitol Police. Thank you for that, Sergeant Bob. Good to put a name to that one. Appreciate you being here. I'm Not Gas says, sorry, I've been gone for a while. Yeah, I know. I'm Not Gas. I know. I missed you. I'm glad you're back. Says, had to swing by Langley and Quantico for updates on the new trigger words for our field operatives. Well, that's good. That's good. So your field operatives, it's a dangerous world out there. You never know what's happening with a lot of the trigger words that are out there. It'd be a good list to know because we all got to be careful. We all got to be cognizant of that. All right, we got a couple more here on locals. The Darb says, I hope they arrest every single one of the Republicans in Congress. Maybe then they will finally get off their lazy bleeps and start actually doing what their voters sent them there for. Hashtag bums. They are bums. They're not doing anything meaningful. There's no, cohesion with the party. There's no message. There's no unification. They're not doing anything meaningful. Want to Know says, Governor Queen waited a few minutes after Biden and then announced all students shall have masks on this fall. Love those blue masks. Does she have a stock in the company? All the kids. Fauci's saying 2 years old, two-year-olds, wrap them up so that they can breathe their bodily waste as they're growing up. John Halgren says, as a frontline EMS fire employee, I can tell you this pandemic led to the slowest year of my career. Yep. But I guess nobody's really doing much of anything now. Right. So some industries were very, very suppressed in terms of activity. Others were extremely busy. Right. So like I know a nurse in California, or I'm sorry, not a nurse, a neurologist in California who was extremely busy because of all the COVID serotonin syndrome situations happening. Right. He was extremely busy, still extremely busy. So there's ebbs and flows all over the place. No Doubt is here, says, wasn't the original 14 days to slow the spread of voluntary initiative? Not here in Arizona. That was a executive order from the governor. Then the Democratic states were unhappy about it, didn't take enough control, and implemented the first lockdowns. Oh, I see what you're saying. Then the Republicans followed suit. Oh, okay, so I see what you're saying, No Doubt. Yeah, I don't know about that. I really don't know how that worked. I think here in Arizona, we didn't have any, voluntary lockdowns. I think that people started naturally locking down, and then it became official, right? So there was actually a very interesting report from, there's a restaurant app, I think called Open Table, where they were showing that people were stopping, were reducing their time going to restaurants already before the lockdowns happened, right? So people were locking down and sort of withdrawing from social life before the government ordered it. Interesting questions. Okay, a couple more, and then we're going to get to the super chats. Want to know says, maybe Kamala Biden weren't vaccinated. Maybe they should be wearing masks. Well, they said that they were vaccinated there, but I get your point. Three Girlies is here, says, hopefully people will start to wake up. The government can't be trusted. Founding fathers already knew that. That's why we have checks and balances. Yes, maybe it's time for the American people to hold their government officials accountable. Perhaps this was what was needed to wake Americans up to what's been going on for far too long. You know, I've been seeing a lot of that, and I've been seeing people, I spend too much time on Twitter, talk about it a lot, but I get a lot of the content for the show from there, and I was seeing that there's a lot of sort of, anecdotal reports that even people who are pro-lockdown, pro-mask, big response from the government on coronavirus are getting tired of this. They're looking at a prospect of another lockdown, of putting masks on again, of keeping their kids out of school again as being very problematic, and they don't want to play that game anymore. All right, great questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let's check out some of the super chats that came in. We say, we got that one already. Curtis Bartle was here, says, like I have always said, if you can smell an if you can smell an aerosolic excrement from somebody's rear end through a mask, it won't stop a virus. Yeah, because you can smell the excrement, the aerosolic excrement. We have another one, CDC equals Centers for Data Corruption. I've also heard it as the Center for Disease Confusion or for Data Confusion, right? That's another one. Oh, we got a birthday in the house. We have Jason Jackson. Happy birthday, Jason. Thanks for being here, and thanks for that super chat. And happy birthday to you, man. That's celebrate that. Birthdays come and go, and it's always good to celebrate another year of wisdom under your belt. Thanks for the support. Happy birthday to you. We also have Lava Java Lavas in the house. I haven't seen Lava Java Lava in a long time. Maybe they would get more people to take the vax if it got you high. Yeah, if there were some benefits over there. And then I said if there were some benefits over there, like getting high versus potentially saving your life, right? All right, LT13, last question on this segment says, let me tell you what kids do in masks at school. Snot in them, chew in them, lick them, wear them on their chins. Yeah, and they take their snot and they smear it all over each other. And so that's just how it's going to be. Great questions, great super chats. Thank you, everybody, for all of your love and support on that segment. Very much appreciated. All right,